Hi everyone, welcome to Nightmare Echo. I know a lot of you use this video to sleep, so before you drift off I think it will be a fun idea if everybody will comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world. Before we start, don't forget to subscribe and like if you're enjoying the case. Right, relax and drift off to sleep while listening to captivating true crime stories paired with soothing rain sounds. Story 1. Springfield, Missouri. June 7, 1992. A quiet neighborhood, the kind where people leave their doors unlocked, where neighbors wave from their porches, where nothing ever seems out of place. But that night, something happened. Something that would leave an entire town grasping for answers that, even decades later, remain just out of reach. Three women, Stacy McCall, Suzanne Streeter, and her mother, Cheryl Levitt, were supposed to wake up to a new day. There were plans made. A fresh chapter ahead. Stacy and Suzanne had just graduated high school. Their futures were waiting for them. But instead, they were never seen again. A house, undisturbed. Their purses lined up neatly, untouched. A car parked in the driveway, as if they had simply stepped away for a moment. But they never came back. And then there was the voicemail. A message left on the answering machine that would later be erased. No one knows what it said. No one knows who left it. And outside, a single broken porch light. A detail so small, so seemingly insignificant. But in this case, where nothing made sense, every detail mattered. There were no signs of a struggle. No screams heard in the dead of night. No forced entry. Just silence. And in that silence, an unsettling question. How can three people vanish without a trace? The more you look at this case, the more it refuses to give you answers. Witness accounts contradict each other. Timelines blur. Leads fade into dead ends. And yet, buried in the shadows of this unsolved mystery, there are whispers, of strange phone calls, of an unidentified van, of secrets that may never be uncovered. This is the story of the Springfield Three. June 6, 1992. A night filled with promise. The end of one chapter, the beginning of another. For high school seniors Stacy McCall and Susie Streeter, it is a moment they have been waiting for, the night of their graduation. Laughter, flashing cameras, the thrill of knowing the future is finally here. Friends gather, posing for photos, soaking in every last second before life takes them in different directions. The plan was simple. A night of celebration, then sleepover at a friend's house. But plans change. Without warning, without much thought, they make a last-minute decision, one that seems small, insignificant. Instead of staying at their friends', they decide to return to Susie's house for the night. A home waiting for them. A place that should have been safe. Inside, Susie's mother, Cheryl Levitt, is already there. The lights are on. The beds are made. Everything is as it should be. But by morning, everything is wrong. No one hears from them. No calls. No messages. No sign of life behind the walls of the small, neatly kept house on East Delmar Street. Hours pass. Concern grows. Friends arrive, expecting to find them sleeping in after a long night. Instead, they find something else. Something that does not make sense. Their cars are still in the driveway, parked exactly as they were left. Inside the house, nothing is out of place. Their purses sit side by side, untouched. Keys, wallets, even personal items, everything is still there. The television is on, the glow of the screen flickering in the empty room. A half-smoked cigarette rests in an ashtray, as if someone had stepped away for only a moment. But the house is silent. No movement. No sign of struggle. No indication of where they went, or why they never came back. And then there's the voicemail. A single message left on the answering machine. A clue. A mistake. No one knows. Because before it can be saved, before anyone realizes its importance, it is erased. Gone forever. Along with the only 3 people who could have explained it. Outside, the porch light is broken. A small detail. One that seems meaningless on its own. But here, in a case that offers no logical explanation, it stands out. An unspoken question hanging in the air. What happened during the night? What took place inside that house? How does an ordinary evening turn into something unexplainable? No one saw them leave. No one heard a thing. One moment, they were there. And the next, they were gone. In the days that followed, a town would be left searching for answers. A case with no clear suspects, no crime scene, no trace of where they could have gone. A disappearance that has remained unsolved for more than 3 decades. What really happened to the Springfield 3? And how could 3 women vanish, without a single clue pointing to where they went? It starts with a simple knock. A friend, stopping by, expecting to see them. Maybe they're still asleep. Maybe they lost track of time. But as the seconds pass, something feels off. No answer. No sound from inside. The door unlocked. Hesitation lingers, but concern wins. They step inside. Everything is quiet. Too quiet. Nothing looks disturbed. The living room is untouched. The glow of the television flickers in the empty space, the soft murmur of static filling the air. On the floor, 3 purses lined up neatly, as if placed there deliberately. Their keys, wallets, identification, everything they would have taken with them, left behind. Their clothes from the night before, folded in careful stacks. As if the night had ended as it should have. As if they had gone to bed, expecting to wake up. But they never did. Something isn't right. They call out. No response. Each room was checked. Empty beds. No sign of a struggle. No sign of anything unusual. Except for the absence of 3 people who should be there. And then the phone rings. A sharp, sudden sound cutting through the silence. The friend hesitates, then picks up. On the other end, an unfamiliar voice. Distorted. Unsettling. The words are unclear, but the tone is unmistakable. Something about it is wrong. The friend listens, trying to make sense of what's being said. Then, just as quickly as it began, the call ends. A voicemail is left. But before anyone else can hear it, it is erased. Gone. A potential clue lost forever. Outside, another detail. Small, but strange. The porch light shattered. Not broken from within, as if something had been knocked over inside the house. No. This was different. The glass lay outside, scattered across the ground. A detail that could mean nothing, or everything. What happened inside this house between 2 a.m. and sunrise? Imagine walking into your home and finding it exactly as you left it. The television is still playing. Your belongings in their usual place. But something is wrong. The silence presses down on you. The air feels different. You sense it before you can explain it. Something is missing. 3 women. Gone without a trace. No forced entry. No clear signs of what happened. Just a lingering unease. A mystery that has only deepened with time. If you walked into a house like this, purses untouched, TV still on, phone calls unanswered, what would you think? Let me know in the comments. Disappearance cases usually leave behind something, a clue, a trace, a thread to follow. But here, nothing makes sense. Everything is exactly as it should be, except for the fact that they are gone. Investigators search for answers, but the deeper they look, the more unsettling the possibilities become. Was someone already inside? A theory emerges. One that suggests the unthinkable. What if the threat wasn't outside? What if it was waiting for them inside the house? Consider the details. The unlocked front door. The untouched belongings. The lack of forced entry. There are no signs of a break-in. No obvious struggle. If someone took them, how did they get in without a sound? Unless, they never had to. Unless they were already there, hidden in the shadows, waiting. It would explain the eerie stillness of the home. The neatly arranged purses. The TV left on, as if someone had been sitting there, watching, undisturbed. Perhaps they never saw it coming. Perhaps, in the quiet hours of the night, someone stepped out of the darkness, and everything changed. Then, there's another possibility. A more targeted approach. One that suggests they were taken not by chance, but by design. Susie Streeter had a past connection that raised suspicion. Her ex-boyfriend, known for his violent tendencies. A history of threats. A reputation that made him someone worth looking at twice. Could he have held a grudge? Could this have been personal? There's also something else. A vehicle. A green van. Witnesses recall seeing it lingering near the house, the driver watching. No one knows who it belonged to. No one ever came forward. But what if that van wasn't just passing through? What if it was waiting? And when the moment was right, it struck. And then, there's the silence of the Ozarks. A vast stretch of land where people disappear, and are never found. Some believe this case was bigger than a single person. That it was tied to something more organized. Something that operates in the shadows, beyond the reach of local police. Rumors of trafficking. Underground networks. Secrets buried beneath the surface. Years after the disappearance, a convicted criminal made a claim. He said he knew what happened. That he knew where they were. That the answers were just beneath the earth, hidden in concrete. But when pressed for details, he refused to say more. Was he lying? Or was he too afraid to tell the truth? 3 women. 3 possible fates. But no definitive answers. After all this time, no theory has ever been proven. No arrests. No bodies. No closure. Just speculation and a growing list of unanswered questions. Which theory do you believe? Was it someone they knew? A stranger waiting in the night? Or is there another piece missing, one that no one has uncovered? Let me know in the comments. 30 years have passed. 3 decades of searching. 3 decades of questions that lead to nowhere. The world has moved forward, but this case remains suspended in uncertainty. No bodies. No evidence. Just silence. It's as if they never existed. As if the night swallowed them whole, leaving behind nothing but whispers and fading memories. Detectives have come and gone. Suspects questioned, leads followed, theories debated. And yet, every possibility unravels before it can bring answers. It's like chasing shadows, always just out of reach. Some cases go cold because they lack witnesses. This one had plenty. People claim to have seen something. A van. A strange man. Someone was lingering near the house. But nothing ever led to proof. Nothing ever connected the dots. The truth is out there, but buried beneath layers of time and uncertainty. And yet, every so often, someone says they feel something. A flicker of movement in the corner of their eye. A figure standing just beyond the glow of a streetlight. The uneasy sense of being watched when walking past the house where it happened. It's nothing. Just tricks of the mind. Or is it? There are those who claim to hear voices in the night, whispers carried in the wind, too faint to make out, but just close enough to feel real. As if someone, or something, is still out there. Still waiting to be found. Is it guilt? Imagination? Or is it the truth, pressing against reality, desperate to be uncovered? 3 women. 3 lives. Gone without a trace. The Springfield 3, lost in the void of the unknown. Could we have missed something? Could the answer be hidden in plain sight? Story 2. Christmas Eve, 1945. Fayetteville, West Virginia. A night meant for celebration. Stockings hang by the fireplace. Gifts sit wrapped beneath the tree. Inside the Sauter home, a family prepares for Christmas morning. George and Jenny Sauter, along with 9 of their 10 children, settle in for the night. The younger ones drift to sleep, their dreams filled with the excitement of what awaits them at dawn. But dawn never comes the way they expect. Just after midnight, a fire erupts. Flames race through the wooden frame of the house, swallowing everything in their path. Smoke fills the air. Panic spreads. George and Jenny escape with 4 of their children. But 5 Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty are still inside. Their bedroom is on the upper floor. Trapped. George tries to go back in. The heat is unbearable. The staircase is already gone, consumed by flames. The phone line is dead. The ladder always kept nearby is missing. The trucks that could have helped won't start. Every attempt to save them fails. The fire burns fast, too fast. Within 45 minutes, the house is gone, reduced to smoldering ashes. But when daylight breaks, something is wrong. There are no remains. No bones. No trace of the 5 children who should have been lost in the fire. The ground is searched. Every inch of the rubble combed through. Experts say there should be something left. Bones do not simply vanish. And yet there is nothing. Then, the phone rings. A voice on the other end. Low. Unfamiliar. A chilling message that makes no sense, but changes everything. And somewhere, just beyond the wreckage of what was once a home, a figure is seen. Standing in the distance. Watching. What happened to the Sauter children? Were they lost in the fire? Or did something else happen that night, something no one could have imagined? December 24, 1945. A home filled with holiday cheer. 10 stockings hang in a neat row. Laughter drifts from the living room as the younger children fight off sleep, too excited for the morning to come. George and Jenny Sauter, parents to 10 children, make their rounds through the house. The older kids are still awake, enjoying the last moments of Christmas Eve. The younger ones have already curled up in their beds, lost in dreams of what tomorrow will bring. Everything feels safe. Familiar. But in just a few hours, nothing will ever be the same again. Just past midnight, the phone rings. Jenny stirs, groggy from sleep. Who would call at this hour? She slips out of bed, careful not to wake George, and makes her way downstairs. The house is still and quiet. Outside, the snow continues to fall, untouched. She lifts the receiver, pressing it to her ear. On the other end, a woman's voice. Strange. Offbeat. There's laughter, forced, unnatural. Glass clinks in the background, as if she's in the middle of a party. Then, the question. Is this the Sauter residence? Jenny answers. Yes, it is. More laughter. Then silence. The line goes dead. Jenny stands there, the dial tone buzzing in her ear. Something about it unsettles her, though she can't explain why. She places the receiver back in its cradle and glances around the dimly lit house. The children's stockings sway slightly from the mantel. The Christmas tree lights flicker. Everything appears normal. But then, she notices something else. The front door. It's unlocked. That's strange. She was sure it had been locked before they went to bed. A small shiver runs through her, but she dismisses it, thinking one of the older kids must have forgotten. She closes the door, turns the lock, and heads back upstairs. Minutes pass. Then, she wakes again. This time, it's different. The air is thick. Heavy. A scent lingers, sharp and acrid. Smoke. Jenny bolts upright. Panic sets in. She shakes George awake. He doesn't need an explanation. The moment he opens his eyes, he smells it too. The house is on fire. Flames lick at the walls, racing across the ceiling. The heat is intense, spreading fast. Smoke fills the hallways, curling into every corner. The children, where are the children? Jenny and George rush through the house, screaming their names. Chaos erupts. 4 of them make it out, Marion, Sylvia, John, and George Jr., but 5 remain trapped inside. Maurice. Martha. Louis. Jenny. Betty. George tries to go back in, but the staircase is already gone, swallowed by fire. Every instinct tells him to save his children, but every attempt is met with failure. The phone line cut. The ladder that should be by the house is missing. His trucks both refuse to start. Every escape route, blocked. And within 45 minutes, the home is nothing but ash. But in the morning, when the smoke clears, the real nightmare begins. The fire burned hot. Too hot. Within 45 minutes, the Sauter home was consumed by flames that left nothing behind. A home full of laughter, of Christmas joy, reduced to embers in less than an hour. But when the smoke cleared, something wasn't right. Something was missing. 5 children. 5 young lives. No longer inside the house. And yet, there was no sign of them in the ashes. George Sauter was a strong man. A father who didn't hesitate. The moment he realized the fire was spreading, he did what any parent would do. He tried to save his children. He ran outside, planning to climb through their windows, pull them from the flames. But when he reached the spot where his ladder should have been, where it was always kept, always ready, it was gone. Panic set in. Every second counted. The fire moved fast, swallowing wood, glass, and everything in its path. He thought of the trucks, his work vehicles, parked just outside. If the ladder was missing, he'd use them to climb up. He raced to the first truck, turned the key, nothing. The engine wouldn't start. He ran to the second again, nothing. 2 trucks, both in perfect working order the day before. Now completely useless. Inside the house, the fire raged. His children were trapped. He called out their names, but the only answer was the roar of the flames. Desperate, Jenny tried to call for help, her fingers trembling as she dialed the operator. The phone was dead. Cut off. There was no way to reach anyone. No way to call for rescue. No way to stop the nightmare unfolding before their eyes. The neighbors, alerted by the glow of the fire, rushed to help. They tried to contact the fire department, but something was wrong. The response was too slow. The nearest station was only a few miles away, yet help didn't arrive until hours later, long after the house had collapsed into a pile of smoldering rubble. By the time dawn arrived, the Sauter family stood in the cold, staring at the ruins of their home. 5 children, gone. But as they searched through the ashes, looking for any sign of any trace of their remains, a terrifying question began to take shape. If the fire had claimed them, where were the bones? A cut phone line. A missing ladder. A fire that burns too quickly. Coincidence, or sabotage? Fires destroy. They consume. But they do not erase everything. Bones survive. That is what the Sauter family was told by experts. It's what science dictates. In the aftermath of house fires, human remains are always found. Even in cremation, where temperatures reach over 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit for hours, bones do not fully disintegrate. And yet, here, in the ruins of a home that burned for just 45 minutes, there was nothing. No skulls. No teeth. No fragments. No trace of Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, or Betty. Nothing. The official explanation came too quickly. Authorities claimed the fire was hot enough to destroy everything, that the children's remains had simply turned to ash. But when Jenny Sauter spoke with a local crematorium worker, she was met with a chilling truth. Even in the most intense fires, bones do not vanish. So where were her children? Days passed. The ruins of the house were searched again and again. The family sifted through soot with their bare hands, desperate for anything that could tell them what had happened. But as they searched, more unsettling details emerged. The phone line had not been burned by the fire, it had been cut. The ladder, later found tossed down an embankment, had been deliberately moved. And then, there were the sightings. Witnesses came forward with strange stories. A woman at a local diner swore she saw the missing Sauter children the morning after the fire, accompanied by two men. Another claimed they were in a different town entirely, in the back seat of a mysterious car, peering out the window as if waiting for someone to recognize them. But each lead dissolved into nothing. Each sighting was just out of reach. Years passed. The questions remained. And then, decades later, an envelope arrived in the mail. There was no return address. No explanation. Just a single photograph inside. A young man, standing in front of a plain backdrop. His expression is unreadable. His eyes, familiar. On the back of the photo, a message was scrawled in uneven handwriting. Louis Sauter. I love my brother Frankie. Illo boys. A 90132 or 35. Louis. One of the missing Sauter children. Could it be him? Had he somehow survived? And if so, why had he never come home? The Sauter family searched for answers. Hired private investigators. Followed leads that led nowhere. But the sender of the photograph was never found. The young man in the image was never identified. A vanished family. A missing past. And a photograph that only deepens the mystery. For years, the Sauter family searched for answers. The fire had taken their home, but it hadn't taken their hope. If there were no remains, if no bones had been found, then their children were out there. Somewhere. But if they had been taken, by whom? And why? It wasn't long before whispers began to spread. This was no accident, people said. This was deliberate. And maybe just maybe it had started long before the fire ever broke out. George Sauter wasn't an ordinary man. He had built a life in America after emigrating from Italy, becoming a respected businessman, a father of 10. But he had enemies. His outspoken political beliefs had stirred tension in the local Italian community. He had made comments about Mussolini that some did not take lightly. In the months before the fire, strangers had come to their home. One man, trying to sell life insurance, had warned him, "Your house will go up in smoke, and your children will be destroyed." A threat. Dismissed at the time. But was it a warning? The fire was too fast. Witnesses reported hearing a loud bang on the roof before the flames erupted. Could an incendiary device have been thrown? Had the fire been set intentionally, meant as a message? And if so, was the fire meant to destroy the Sauter family? Or to create a distraction while something else happened? The phone line had been cut before the fire. The ladder, deliberately moved. The trucks, working perfectly just hours earlier, suddenly became useless. These were not coincidences. And then, the most chilling detail of all, a witness claimed to have seen the missing children. The morning after the fire, at a diner miles away, a woman swore she had served breakfast to 5 children, accompanied by 2 men. They seemed nervous. They spoke a language she didn't recognize. When she saw their pictures in the newspaper later, her stomach dropped. She was certain she had seen the Sauter children. But by the time anyone investigated, they were gone. Others came forward with similar accounts. A woman in Charleston claimed to have seen them in a hotel, accompanied by adults who refused to let them speak. A private investigator followed a lead to Kentucky, where another sighting had been reported. Each time, the trail went cold. Each time, the answers slipped just out of reach. But what if the truth wasn't in the ashes? What if it was in the town itself? Some believed the fire was never meant to be solved. That someone knew exactly what had happened that night, and chose to stay silent. Why had the fire department taken so long to respond? Why had officials been so quick to declare the children dead, despite the lack of remains? And why, when George Sauter tried to have the case reopened, did so many doors seem to close in his face? Years passed. Leads dried up. But the Sauters never stopped searching. They placed billboards along the highway, offering rewards, pleading for answers. And then, the photograph arrived. The young man, the cryptic message. A glimpse of something long buried. A piece of the past breaking through the surface. Was this Louis Sauter? Had one of the missing children reached out from the shadows, leaving behind a final clue? Or was it just another dead end in a case already tangled in uncertainty? Did the fire take them, or did someone else? Years passed. Then decades. The world moved on, but the questions never faded. 5 children vanished without a trace. No bodies. No bones. Nothing left behind but speculation and silence. For the Sauter family, the search never ended. Jenny Sauter wore black for the rest of her life, mourning children she refused to believe were dead. George Sauter spent his final years staring at that billboard, waiting for something, anything, to bring them back to him. And their surviving children, they carried the weight of the unknown, searching until the very end. But the truth never came. And perhaps it never will. A fire should leave remains. But it didn't. A case should have answers. But it doesn't. And in the empty spaces, in the gaps where explanations should be, only one thing remains: uncertainty. And then, another story. Another disappearance. Springfield, Missouri. 1992, a mother and 2 daughters, gone without a sound. The car where they left it. The door unlocked. The phone rang in an empty house. And the only clue? A voicemail, accidentally erased. A broken light. And nothing else. The Springfield 3. Missing for over 30 years. 2 cases. 2 disappearances. No answers. 1, lost in the flames. 1, lost in the dark. Somewhere, someone knows the truth. Somewhere, the missing wait to be found. But until then, they remain where we fear the most, just beyond our reach. Did the fire take them? Or did something else? Which case haunts you more? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories that leave you searching for answers, subscribe. Because some mysteries refuse to stay buried.